Welcome to the Growth Shift. I'm David Zilstra. Here's what I've learned after years in business. Every leader who's built something meaningful has a story about the moment they had to shift, when failure forced innovation, when change became opportunity, when they chose growth over comfort. On this show, we dive into those pivotal moments, the setbacks that became breakthroughs, the strategic shifts that accelerated growth, and the frameworks that turned obstacles into opportunities. Because here's the truth. In a world where change is the only constant, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who've learned to shift strategically through it. So whether you're facing your own pivot point or just want to learn from someone who's been there, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Valentix. At Valentix, we help B2B coaches and consultants who are struggling with generating consistent high-quality leads, automating their client onboarding processes, and scaling their operations without simply adding more hours or headcount. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because they're bogged down in manual tasks and feel like they're missing out on the power of modern technology. But with the right strategy and AI-powered solutions, they're able to streamline their workflows, attract better opportunities, and achieve sustainable growth. If that sounds like you or someone you know, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's jump into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're joined by Corey Jackson, a highly accomplished entrepreneur and the co-founder of Sales Haven. Corey's journey began in engineering, leading him through finance and corporate roles before he found his true calling in sales and entrepreneurship. He's personally closed over $50 million in cash collected during his sales career, and his team at Sales Haven manages over $30 million in production. Sales Haven operates as a done-for-you growth partner, helping business owners scale by handling marketing, operations, and talent, allowing entrepreneurs to stay in their zone of genius. Corey is also a pioneer in leveraging AI for internal efficiency and client solutions, like real-time sales call analysis. Corey, welcome to the Growth Shift.
Thank you, man. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. Now, Corey, you started your career as an engineer coming out of college, but quickly pivoted away from it. Can you take us back to that initial phase? I mean, what is it that drew you to engineering initially?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's actually one of my favorite parts about sales. So the overlap there, I think is pretty interesting, but it was really just the ability to solve problems. Engineering at its core is being able to solve problems that are either currently happening or future pacing the solving of those problems that could happen. And being able to build prototypes around it, stress test everything, see where it breaks, and rebuild it again, right? Which is very similar to being an entrepreneur. For those entrepreneurs who are listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you build something out and then all of a sudden you stress test it and you put repetitions through it and it breaks and you have to rebuild it again. But that was the initial draw to that path in my life for sure.
Okay, so I mean, you like solving problems. We could break it down to that, and I could see why you were drawn to engineering. But for a lot of people listening to this, they might have heard, oh, engineering, he must have been set for life. That's a great job. There's great opportunity for growth. I mean, why leave a secure job with so much opportunity in the future if it was something that you ultimately enjoyed doing, it seems?
I did and I didn't. I mean, I really liked the actual work that I was doing, but I did not like a lot of I didn't like a lot of like the hierarchy, the politics that existed. There is a very, very clear, what I'll call echo chambers that exist within the hierarchy. They were not willing to take on new ideas, especially if you were a junior. There was no idea meritocracy or anything like that. And it was tough, but I also really didn't enjoy the sociability aspect. I don't know if you know very many engineers, but they're not unbelievably social people. For the most part, don't get me wrong, there's exceptions to the rule there, but I really had a hard time with that. And then the head engineer on my team had been there for, man, it must have been 20 years. And through some conversations, I uncovered that he was making about $250,000 a year. And like for the average person, that's great. But there was no way I was going to work somewhere for 20 years to make relatively short after that, I started to make my adjustment out of engineering.
You said something kind of almost contradictory there, right? The social aspect of engineering or lack thereof, right? I think that people generally picture engineers as the people who like to sit behind computers and don't really like to talk to people. And here you are coming and looking for that social aspect, as we should. Like, we're all humans, we're all social creatures. That was lacking, and you went towards sales from there. I mean, most engineers would probably have nightmares just even thinking about making that change and getting uncomfortable talking to people, going through new things as well. That's a big shift, though, from engineering into sales. I mean, what ultimately led to you leaving engineering? Because that's a big jump, especially as a young guy freshly out of college who had that
Yeah.
the job, let's say, right?
Yeah, the best advice I ever got when I was in college, so if you listen to this and you're in college right now, pay attention, was aggregate as many mentors in the space as humanly possible that are out in front of you. So I started to aggregate mentors in areas that were really interesting to me. So like I would go out and finance and people who had amazing relationships, and then just like the uber wealthy, and like very healthy individuals and all that kind of stuff. And I started to create like this group. And by the time I graduated, I had 14 people who were mentoring me in like different areas of my life. So I went to them and I didn't reach two of them, but I had 12 independent conversations. So they weren't all together or at the same time. And I know my mentors didn't talk to each other. And they all said, you want to talk to people, you want to feel the impact, you want to control your income, and you want to solve problems. Go into sales. So like 12 different people at different times said you should go into this path. So that's what I ended up doing. I trusted the mentorship that I received, and that's the direction that I ended up going. And man, I can't imagine my life without it at this point.
So these are mentors that you aggregated while you were in college, it sounds like. Relationships that you nurtured, and after the fact you left college, you were in engineering. You look back on the advice that you got from them. When did you know it was the right time to leave engineering and try a new pursuit?
I don't know if you ever think that there's a right time, because as soon as you leave something, like every single time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and vice versa, right? And I mean, there's obviously social prestige, I'll call it, that comes with the engineering, and you get like the status and the proud parents and all of that kind of stuff, right? And walking out of that, there was so much inherent downside that was going to happen immediately. Social status was going to evaporate instantly
You were
doing
going
that.
into sales after all, right?
Yeah.
Scumbag car salesman, or whatever people tell themselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the slick back hair, tweed jacket, like that kind of stuff. And sales and entrepreneurship share something that I find really interesting, where nobody cares if you are in those fields until you're successful. And then all of a sudden it's like, how do you do it? Is it possible? Can I do this thing, right? But they share like this common lineage and ideology around that. But as soon as you leave something that has white collar prestige into something that really doesn't, there's an uphill battle that you fight until you reach a level of what I'll call success in whichever one of those fields. So I was willing to stomach that, knowing it was going to take anywhere between 12 to 60 months to do it. But it was something that as soon as I started, I fell in love with, and I had a ton of passion around. And luckily it didn't take 60 months for me to get there. But I was more than willing for that to be the case.
Amazing. So, I mean, if we fast forward here a little bit, you made that change. Of course, you failed. There were challenges. You learned, you grew, but it was something that was calling you, something that resonated with you. And then you made another leap, right? You went into entrepreneurship. I mean, those initial struggles and challenges of entrepreneurship, especially as a young guy, right? They can be more significant, but there are some advantages that come with youth as well. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced initially going off on your own?
Yeah, I think it was Elon Musk who has the quote of, you get paid in direct proportion to the complexity and the volume of problems that you solve. In sales, you solve problems like one to one. In entrepreneurship, you solve problems one to many. And the complexity of those problems have a statistically significant amount of difficulty higher than what you run into at sales, right? And what you are shouldering more of is risk. When you're a salesperson, you don't have that much risk, especially if you're a salesperson that has like a really healthy base salary and commission on top of that. Like, you don't carry any inherent risk. Now, if you're commission only, you start to carry that a little bit more. But as soon as you are the entrepreneur and the founder, you carry way more risk. You carry reputational risk. You carry financial risk. Like there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. So like the initial struggles that we ran into, just like any business, was we got to get clients. So when making that transition, luckily I had a pretty great network of people that I was able to call on. And most of the conversations were actually, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you know anybody who might be interested in this? Not even making a direct ask to the people in my network. And fortunately, a lot of them like raised their hand and said, hey, I'm actually interested in that. So we were able to onboard our first handful of clients relatively quickly, within our first 90 to 120 days. And then from there, the biggest bottleneck has always been talent. Yeah, that's one that I'm still solving for right now.
I don't know if anyone ever solves that wholly and truly. So if we look at that for what it is, I mean, you obviously put in a lot of groundwork years before you went into entrepreneurship with the relationships that you built, right? And starting out, you took the path that all new entrepreneurs should, but I think most don't, which is working through your warm network, right? Going to people and maybe not asking for business directly, but just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you know anyone who I might be able to help ultimately? I think that might come from Alex Hormozy.
It is.
The
Yeah.
God
It's
himself, we
100%
could say.
from Mosey. Yeah.
So you did quite well. You started up pretty quickly. I mean, tell us a little bit more then, Corey. At Sales Haven, I mean, what exactly do you do to help people?
Yeah. So we have Sales Haven is one of the divisions that we have that is Fractional Sales Directorship. It was our core business. And then we actually created some of our own problems, which I'd be happy to talk about. But it was our core business where we would come in and we would manage teams who were stuck. We noticed that there was this big gap of teams that were founder led or big enough to have a full time A player sales manager, right? A full-time sales manager that is really, really good at what they do should make anywhere between 200 to 250,000 a year. But the companies who can't quite shoulder that expense yet were stuck in this weird place where they either had a salesperson who kind of took like the lead role but wasn't really a manager, or they had the founder trying to manage the sales team while also worrying about marketing and fulfillment and ops and like all this stuff, right? So being able to get somebody typically from, let's call it like 80 to $100,000 a month up to $400,000 to $500,000 a month, there was this big gap that existed in that marketplace. So what we did is we filled that gap. So if it was you need this person and this caliber of talent, but you can't afford the full-time person yet, but you also, with all the hats that you're wearing, can't manage the team appropriately and therefore also keeping you stuck, we would come in and work in your business from a fractional capacity to get you to the point where you could hire somebody full time. Just like I think there's a dating app there called Hinge, where it's like the app designed to be deleted, which is a great tagline for an app like that. But that was us as a service provider. We were the service that was designed to be fired from. We wanted to grow you to the place where you did have somebody come in full time, and that's kind of how we operated. We created our own problems through that, but that was that's how we worked.
Amazing. So maybe to distill that even into just a few words, it sounds like what you do with Sales Haven and your other verticals as well is you come in and you just give business owners more leverage, right? You give them the skills and the talent that they need in a limited way that aligns with where they're at financially so that they can grow beyond that need and continue to evolve.
Yeah, most business owners are good at the thing. So if they're a marketing agency, they're probably pretty good at marketing, right? If they own a leather company, they're probably a really good leather worker, right? And they don't really know how to do the other stuff. So what we do is we say, hey, you're the founder, you're good at this. I want you to stay in your zone of genius and be the artist of this thing. And let us handle this stuff that you don't know anything about.
Or don't want to know anything about it at the same time,
Right.
I'm sure.
Yeah. It's low leverage for them to know anything about it too. So,
Precisely.
yeah, it's just how can we keep you in the artist seat?
I love that. Do you have any examples of a client that you might have helped and how you took them from point A to point Z perhaps?
Yeah, I do. We worked with a company who they did fractional account management for marketing agencies. So marketing agencies typically have something called an account manager or like a lead strategist, and they are the face that interacts with the client. Okay, so think of them as like a customer success, client success manager in the marketing space. Similar to the problem that we solve, some marketing agencies don't have enough budget to hire the really good person, but they still need them there so that they don't have to do all of the client facing themselves. But the business was built by somebody who is really, really, really good at account management. And their sales process was built by this same person. Now, don't get me wrong, it worked to a point. They got up to probably about $250,000 a year or a month, but then it's flatlined and they got stuck there. And what we did is we came in, we noticed some major problems, like very, very quickly. The first one was their sales cycle was 45 days long, and they had like 6 different meetings to get somebody to close.
Confused mind never buys, as many people know as well, not just a recipe for confusion.
For sure. Yeah. But like account managers are very relationship driven. So because they are relationship driven as a founder, they created a sales process that was very relationship driven of 6 meetings before getting a yes. Right. We also noticed some big holes in their sales process because of the relationship driven theology behind it. They weren't challenging people. They weren't holding people accountable to their goals. They weren't like, there were all kinds of things missing in this process. So we came in and we worked with them for about 120 days, I think. And in that 120 days, we were able to generate $480,000 of MRR in 120 days. We shortened their sales cycle from 45 days to 1 day. We increased their closing percentage from 11 to 12% up to 37 to 40%. And then what happened, and the reason why we stepped out, which is some of the problems I was alluding to earlier, is fulfillment couldn't keep up. So we actually had to stop our relationship because their operational back end was not able to support the amount of volume that we were doing from the sales side. So we matched their entire quarter performance the quarter before in 1 month.
Ground shaking.
And their operations were not ready to handle that.
So you came in and you ultimately provided a service so good that you broke the business temporarily, I'm sure.
We fired ourselves, essentially, yeah. But I see that stuff happen all the time because the artistry that we were talking about earlier is typically the theory that people put into their sales process of like whatever they are good at. Good, bad, or indifferent, most of the time it doesn't work.
So, I mean, you obviously achieved incredible results with this client, as I'm sure you have with many other. What I'm curious here, and I'm sure some of the listeners as well, sitting down thinking, how can I get a client like that? Right, if they know that they can't have such an impact as well, is how would you go about getting a client just like that again? If we erase all of the contacts on your phone, if we pretend you're starting out as a new person, I mean, what would the approach that you would take today to land a client of that caliber with your ability to be able to have such an impact?
Yeah, I think people at the beginning, and I would love to argue with anybody on this, but I think people at the beginning go the spray and pray method, and they do such a mass market approach, trying to get anybody to say yes just because they need the revenue to come in. And there's a cliche saying, if you try to solve everybody's problem, you solve nobody's problem. So I would get hyper specific on a niche and an avatar to be able to speak to one person and one problem. And ideally, I would try to do that across one channel just to become a master at that thing. So depending on where your avatar is, whether they are on Meta or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, you want to master that channel where your potential client would live. And that's going to be through outreach, that's going to be through direct messaging. But the most important is you have to speak to it in your content, because I promise if you direct message somebody, before they respond, the first thing they're going to do is go to your profile. And if you can speak to the problem that they may or may not be incurring, but if position yourself as a market leader, you will have a significantly higher response rate. But if I had a very limited window, very, very limited window, and not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of capital, what I would actually do is attend an event. I would attend an event where my ICP lived, and I would talk to everybody in the room to schedule as many meetings as I could because I could flex my knowledge in person without them having to find me on the internet somewhere to be able to get like a first maybe 1 to 3 clients. That's what I would do immediately.
It sounds like you're really relationship driven just with what you're saying there, right? You go to an event, speak with people in person, build that connection and that trust, display your expertise.
Well, we're in a trust trough right now in the internet space, especially like coaching agencies, even some SaaS, right, is in this like trust trough where the trust was unbelievably high. Let's look at like 2017, 2018. I mean, it was, if you're an expert, I'll pay you whatever you need to get there. And then all of these people started to get burned, right, by people who were really bad practitioners on fulfillment. They were just good salespeople, right? And then it hit this valley of trust, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But I do believe that it is going to come back up, and it's going to flush out, a lot of the charlatans in the space by default almost. But in this trough, right, that we need to be able to build trust and relationships, right? So people need to know, like, and trust you. And being able to do that in person, you can do that at a significantly faster clip. You can compress the time horizon of being able to do those 3 things versus building that relationship over the internet, which could take days, could take weeks, right? Whereas I could do it in one 30 to 45 minute conversation if I'm right in front of you.
Couldn't agree more, right? That trust and bridging that gap, the trough of distrust, or that valley that we're in right now, requires standing out and doing things differently. I think that AI, as much as it's being abused right now and flooding the market, I think ultimately that's also what's going to lead to the increase in trust, because the people who aren't using it right won't be able to continue. Before we jump into the AI conversation, I want to learn a little bit more about what it is that you're doing, what your plans for growth are. I mean, you help businesses grow exponentially. You must also have quite the vision for your own company. What's your vision? What do you want to make happen for yourself over the next 12 months?
12 months. Okay. So right now, our primary demographic that we work with are marketing agencies and high ticket coaches and consultants. We do have companies that are outside of that, whether that is like SaaS, or we've helped 3PLs or physical product businesses or those kinds of things. So we do have that experience. But most of our portfolio is made up of those 2 industries of marketing and high ticket sales. I would like to, in the next 12 months, be able to drastically decrease that concentration risk in one industry, really because of AI. AI, I think, is going to change the landscape of some industries dramatically. I'm really excited for that. I think that is going to really level the playing field as well, and it's going to create more what I'll call like capitalistic environments where you have to provide the best service in order to stay relevant, which as a consumer is amazing. But as a business owner, I need to diversify my risk portfolio by being in as many industries as possible, because some of them may cease to exist and some of them may be decimated and some of them may grow over the next 18 to 24 months. So I'm just going to try to do everything I can to have as many different types of industries within the portfolio as this adjustment unfurls over the next year or 2.
So you want to diversify your risk here. You want to get into some more, I'm sure, adjacent industries to what you're doing now, where you can complement, or where the skills you have and the experience you have complements the expansion as well. You're very relationship driven additionally, right? So if we're looking at how it is you're going to combat the challenges we're facing, right? This trust deficit that's in the market, all of the noise that's being created right now, all of the new coaches and consultants coming in saying they can do the same thing as Corey Jackson. I mean, how, with all these things in consideration, what's your plan for taking a relationship first approach to actually breaking into these new markets?
I think the ability to communicate is going to become currency very soon. We are already seeing it from the younger generation, Alpha, right, Gen Alpha, and they're the screen warriors at the moment. Now, I think that their tech adaptation is going to far supersede, like, I'm a millennial. I think that they're going to crush us when it comes to that, which I'm really excited for, to be able to bring in and find the right talent who can keep up with that. But at some point, the ability to communicate face to face with somebody and build real relationships is going to have an exponential level of value that may not be perceived in our day-to-day right now. It's going to have an inflationary effect. So I think if you can really talk to people and have amazing relationships, that could be strong enough to be a USP or a unique value proposition in the market because it's going to die quickly. I mean, COVID accelerated that quite a bit for some generational gaps there. But that's going to be something that I continue to lean into so that we can have a very unique value proposition that even if somebody has the same exact skill set and the same exact background, to an extent, maybe they can't communicate and create relationships like we can. So that's something that I put a lot of emphasis on. It's also helped, like selfishly as a business owner, it's helped with lifetime value. Our churn rate is very low. We keep clients for a very long time. We even keep them past the point where they should hire somebody full time just because they do like working with us, even if we bring it up to them. Hey man, it's probably time. And they go, we really like working with you. We want to do the continuity thing, right? So it's like, okay. So those pieces, I think, are going to be some of our unique value in the marketplace.
That speaks volumes as well. So, I mean, with that in mind, right, you're going to build relationships through communication, through getting in front of people personally. I mean, are you talking about going back to events to kind of use the tried and true methods that work? Are you talking about content? Is it marketing? How are you going to get these conversations in such a saturated world?
I think it's probably going to be all three. It's kind of going to be like a three-legged stool. If you only build the stool with one leg, it only takes that one leg to break for the whole thing to come crashing down, right? So I think that we are going to probably do all three. I mean, we are doing all three right now. So content, the content engine, I've been fairly consistent on it for a little while now, actually. I want to feel like I'm in your living room by you watching hours and hours and hours of the content, which is great because, it's very value first driven. Hey, do these things. Don't make the same mistakes that I did. Those kinds of things as well. Events, I think that the space as a whole is starving for human connection, which is why we are seeing some of these events have 5, 10, 15,000 people attend because of the work from home, right? COVID created this work from home environment for a lot of industries, not all of them, but a lot of them. And they don't have ability to interact. And then masterminds. So the people who are thinking about the same things, running into the same problems. Now, masterminds are pay to play. I totally get that. They are pay to play, but I will tell you in my own experience, they are the best return on dollars I have ever spent. It has always been going to a mastermind. And then big events that are in your space with your ideal avatar are going to want to be things that you go to as well. So sometimes you have to pay to be in the right room, but the return on the right room will outpace thousands of rooms that are the wrong people.
So where does AI come into play for you then? I mean, it sounds like you have some problems solved already, right? You're providing incredible results. You're building incredible relationships. How is AI going to give you more of an advantage?
Yeah, it's a good question. My bottleneck, which I think I may have mentioned at the beginning, is talent. And AI is going to help alleviate some of that bottleneck. Rather than being very, very human capital intensive, we're able to replace a lot of that talent with AI systems, AI assistants, agents, whatever it is that you want to call them. So we won't have to be as human capital intensive. Now, it's still a bottleneck that I'm running into because some of the human capital that I need requires their intellectual property to be able to bring into the business. And the total addressable market of very, very high end, let's just call them sales managers, is not huge, right? There's not a billion sales managers that have managed an 8-figure business, right? So it's a very small market, which means that I need to get absolutely the most out of running a lean team. So it's going to help us stay as lean as humanly possible to be able to almost defer the human capital bottleneck that we will run into eventually.
And this is incredibly insightful for the listeners as well, because, AI tools and systems, agents, whatever label you want to put on them, their goal isn't to replace your workforce. Their goal is to replace low leverage tasks and employees who eat up a considerable amount of the human capital budget and allow you to put that back into more capable team members to allow you to grow faster. It's about synergy and it's about precision. It's not just about saving a dollar.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of, let's just call them like administrative roles here in the US are $40,000 to $60,000 a year. And if I can have an agent do that for pennies on the dollar, and I can reallocate, let's call it 50 grand, to pay a really top level talent to come into the business, the amount of upside that I'm going to be able to get from hiring a super A player and overpaying them in the market is going to far supersede me having 3 or 4 admins eating up 150 human capital budget. So that's like really what we're leaning into right now, especially on the administrative and ops side. And then the AI tools that we're using for our sales directors allow them to manage more clients, so they get to expand their income range by having all of the administrative tasks handled for them and the really time suck tasks, so that they can bring their impact to more people and not be bogged down in the weeds of the day to day.
So we're looking at some pretty incredible opportunities here for people, right, with AI being considered, but there's a lot of funny things happening right now, and there is some risk that's being posed by AI, as with any change. What are some of the biggest risks or even concerns that you see in the coaching and consulting space with AI in mind?
I'm going to say something controversial here. I think that as AI continues to develop, I think coaches and consultants are going to get wiped off the face of the earth, because I don't think that they are going to be able to bring enough experience to charge a high ticket price that we cannot find with the correct prompting and even just an LLM, not even true AI, right? I think that that is going to happen pretty fast. And the ones who will stay around are going to be the in-person experience that we're talking about. You know, think of like the Tony Robbins events and those kinds of things, where people get to go in and have, you know, whether that's a spiritual or mental change in person with hundreds of other people, where they get the human connection element. But the guys who are, you know, make 10K a month, leave your 9 to 5 job, you know, like that kind of stuff, I think is going to die very quickly, because they're not going to be able to bring more information than AI will. Now, they can bring accountability and things like that, which maybe AI won't do, but I don't know if people are necessarily going to pay 10 to accountability.
Very true. Corey, your insights on strategic growth and AI implementation as well are incredibly valuable for other business owners who are excellent at their craft but struggling with the rest of the business. What's one key piece of actionable advice that you could offer them?
Hire people that are smarter than you at the things that you don't like doing first. So if you have all of your, you know, all the hats that you wear, right? When you're at the beginning of a business, you're a hat rack. You wear all of them. What are the hats that you don't like wearing first? And then as soon as you have enough capital, hire the person to offload that first hat that you don't like doing. And then repeat that process until the only hat that you wear is your favorite hat. A lot of times people try to white knuckle their business, and they try to control every single aspect of what's happening. And the problem with that is the business will only grow to the entrepreneur's expertise in a certain field. And if you try to outlay the operations and you control the operations, but your operator knows way more about operations than you, that's a good thing, but you have to let them gallop and build out what is actually going to work, versus trying to white knuckle and be controlling over every single outcome. Steve Jobs said, "We don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people to tell us what to do." And I think that people just don't lean into that early enough.
Incredible. Corey, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your wisdom with us today. For our listeners who want to learn more about what you're doing, or perhaps are even looking for a fractional advisor such as yourself and your team, what would be the best way to connect with you or find you online?
Yeah. You can follow me on Instagram. It's probably the best spot. My tag is Sales Silverback, but LinkedIn, I'm also very active on, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just Corey Jackson at Revenue Haven, and you'll find me. But those would be the best places, or you can visit our website, revhaven.com.
And that's a wrap on another episode of The Growth Shift. If this conversation sparked something for you, whether it's a new perspective on failure, a strategy you want to try, or just the reminder that every setback can become a setup for something bigger, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid change. They're the ones who shift strategically through it. If you're ready to build the systems that help you grow without the chaos, head over to valentix.io. We help businesses like yours scale smarter, not harder. I'm David Zylstra, and I'll see you in the next shift.